Hello and good morning, Australia, and good evening, our friends in Caribbean, and welcome to a discussion on women leadership in society. As we celebrate Women Leadership Month, Whiteboard Labs and UWI Open Campus honor the strength and the power of women at various roles at homes, workplace, society, and education. Today, we are here to discuss how women can empower our society. I like to introduce our very own Mr. Amit Saxena. Mr. Amit is a technologist at heart with a strong focus on result, accelerate business outcomes by certain creating a strong technology ecosystem, passionate about intelligent automation, cloud, and artificial intelligence. He has wide-ranging experience in technology and organizations like Deloitte, British Council, and Microsoft. Good morning, Amit. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ashish, and good morning and good evening and good afternoon, everyone. We know that we are here from four different parts of the world. So uh, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here and speak to our guests about women in leadership in society. And today we are going to see how women are bringing leadership in the society. And for that, I have got our guest, Prerna Vadikar. She has done some good work for the welfare and upliftment of the society. Prerna is a low capital fellow with an engineering degree in information technology and postgraduate in public policy from IIM Bangalore. And after working in Schneider Electric, Prerna leads strategy at Rural Shows. It's world's largest impact sourcing organization that provides employment to the rural youth in India. But before I start off with the conversation, I would like to thank Dr. Luz Longsworth, who is a Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal for the University of West Indies Open Campus. Thank you, Dr. Longsworth, for having us here, and thank you for being here. And over to you, Prerna. Prerna, how are you doing today?
Thank you so much for the introduction, Amit. I'm really fine. And I'm presently at Oxford. It's 10 p.m. at night and delighted to be speaking to our friends in Australia and the Caribbean.
Interesting. So I would say in the true sense, Industry 4.0 is happening where people coming from Caribbean, I am sitting in Australia, you are in Oxford. I would say almost entire globe, people are available and watching us and we are talking here. Really good to have you here. So Prerna, what brings you to Oxford? You hail from India. What are you doing here?
So I applied to do my MBA here at Oxford after working for 11 years across different spectrum of employment and job opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Here I'm a Weidenfeld Hoffman and Said Foundation scholar at the University of Oxford and doing my post-graduation in business management with emphasis in social impact.
Good. So, can you quickly talk about your experience? You have worked with Schneider Electric, and now you're working with an organization in India, and now you are here in Oxford. What's your journey like? If you could quickly give us a snapshot of your journey to know who you are, it will really help the audience here.
I am typically a person who does not walk the beaten path and have
Hmm.
always ventured trying to create my own journey of what I define as success and tread my own path. In that
Uh-huh.
sense, I started off with Semantic Corporation, which is the Norton antivirus firm as we know it.
Hmm.
Moved on to Schneider Electric doing distribution marketing. After
Hmm.
that, I worked with Rural Shores, which is the world's largest impact sourcing organization, as the vice president of strategy. I
Hmm.
also worked with the state government of India in a left-wing extremist region, working on nutrition, women empowerment, and juvenile justice systems, and worked briefly with the government of Ethiopia with the Ministry of Interior Affairs. And my latest work experience was with a global philanthropic organization called the Wadhwani Foundation, where I worked with small and medium enterprises and accelerating their growth and their job creation through their growth. I also, in between, worked with Dr. Sunita Krishnan, who
Hmm.
is very reputed Padma Shri awardee and works with the very audacious vision of
Mhm.
curbing sexual violence and sex trafficking in the world. And I would say that I've been extremely privileged to have the opportunities to lead at different organizations as well as work with very influential, powerful women leaders. And that I'm very grateful for.
Good. A lot of it for me to digest at this stage. Oh, that's absolutely good. Let's get a little deeper into it. I see that you started a corporate career. Was it a corporate career at Schneider Electric? And then at some point you transitioned into the social welfare side of it. How did that change happen? What was the transition and what was the tipping point of that transition?
That's a really good question. Yes, I was in hardcore corporate, so Semantic Corporation. When I joined, the first thing that I noticed was, hey, we have a pool table in our office, and that was the most exciting part about my employment there. When I
Mhm.
went to Schneider Electric, it was not as fancy as a typical IT company, but it still was a multinational organization. Uh, all events in 5 stars, most of our stays in 5 stars. It was a very luxurious, glamorous life, I would say. And I
Exactly.
was in charge of distribution marketing at that time. So it was to do with customer facing role, even more glamorous than the rest of the
Hmm.
organization, I would say.
Hmm.
What triggered this was, and this is way back in 2010 when we did not have CSR and social impact and social sector the way we know it today, where it's quite glamorous in its own way. I felt that there was something more I had to do. There was something beyond just earning a salary and filling up my annual appraisal forms with HR that I had to work for. And that motivated me to move towards social sector. At that time, I did not know anything about social sector in itself. I knew about one organization where I used to just donate my a small amount to save tax. And I'll be very candid here.
Exactly.
There was
Exactly.
no social concern at all. It was that I want to save tax. This is one way to save tax, and let me do it. And while I was contemplating what should I do with my life and what is the purpose of my life, is it just growing from manager to senior manager to AGM and finally director, but doing the same thing for next 20 years? And that was what triggered this leap of faith, as I would like to call it.
Interesting, interesting. And I think your career started as any other professional's career. We go for the education, higher education, and then we aspire to get into the corporate. And of course, pool table excites everyone. Coffee, pool table, freebies that are available, and it does. I'm sure it is something intrinsic that happened that changed the way you started looking at it. So I also see that you have lived in three countries. Did I understand it correct? It's India because you have been from there, Ethiopia, and now you are in Oxford, which is England. What do you see? What kind of difference do you see? And we're talking about women in society, women leadership in society. What kind of difference do you see in terms of women living in these three different places, the way they are treated, the way they are living, and the way they can bring leadership in the society? You can maybe quote an example if that helps us with the conversation.
Sure, I'll be really happy to talk about this.
Mhm.
Uh, so when I was talking to Whiteboard Labs about when they reached whether I would be talking on this subject, and it is an intercontinental subject on women leadership, I said it does not matter which part of the world is listening to this talk, because the challenges that women face, particularly in the workplace, are universally the same.
Mhm.
And just to substantiate these with some examples, we have, I think, 25 or 28% of the total workforce at managerial levels globally is females. But
Mhm.
this number has remained the same since 1995. That means for 2.5 decades, we do not have more than 25% women in leadership roles, managerial roles. I'm not even talking of executive
The top
levels.
leadership. Okay.
Out of the 180 plus countries, we only have 20 state leaders who are females. And that shows where leadership and women leadership in particular lies. Getting back to your question, how is it different in each of these three countries? Uh, at in UK, I believe there's a lot more openness, at least in terms of the environment, where they are okay with a female working, where they are okay with a female boss. In Ethiopia, I did see a lot of gender stereotypes, very similar to what it was back in India. India is somewhere in between, and in India, it depends entirely on what kind of industry it is. In IT sector, female leadership is far more accepted, probably because of its global culture. You go into manufacturing, the number of women leaders dwindles, the number of women employees becomes less and less, the more manufacturing centered or more supply chain logistics, those kind of industries. At the grassroots, women leadership is a very different agenda altogether. So there are those very typical, stereotypical roles where you see only women, but holistically, the representation of women is very poor back in India. Here, in UK, it's relatively better, but the challenges of glass ceiling, the challenges of unconscious bias, the challenges of gender pay gap, the challenges of women themselves selecting or not selecting themselves for the role or for an opportunity, they are universally the same.
Okay. So I think that's a very good way of putting it across, and some of these numbers really surprised me as an individual because sitting in corporate and just seeing the white collar side of the world, we see that no, everything is working fine. There is no problem whatsoever. But because you have worked at the grassroots level, it seems that there are places where there is a lot of work required, and you have worked on this. So, could you also give me an example of it could be your own experience or someone you have worked with, um, who did not have any authority, and yet this person had to show the leadership? Because typically in our mind, leadership comes, we think that when I become the vice president, that is when I'll become a leader and I will lead the organization, and that's how everyone think, and we just leave it to the future or the fate to happen to us. But uh, do you have some stories where you can start showing leadership even without anything? And we talk about industry 4.0 very often, and industry 4.0, it's all about leadership without authority. So over to you for any examples or incidents that you would like to put.
I can share multiple instances from my work in the field and in the grassroots where women in particularly have demonstrated exceptional leadership criteria. And for me, leadership is not so much about position and authority. I'll give you a simple example why. Way back in 2014, when I was doing my master's in public policy at IIM Bangalore, I led a global panel by women politicians on gender agenda and what it means to lead in countries. And I was surprised to know that 13% of Indian parliamentarians are women compared to more than 25% of Afghanistani female parliamentarians who are women. But that is just a representative number. When it comes to decision-making power, the 25% do not have as much say as much as the 13% in
13%.
India have.
Okay.
And that is where it's not about the position. It's not really about authority. It is about the initiative, the commitment, and the passion, which particularly for me stands out as very, a very clear differentiation of what makes a leader. Just to share one example with you, during one of my assignments with the government of India, there's this tribal belt in a left-wing extremist region in India. It's called Sukma, and where it's one of the most backward places in the country. In terms of human development index, it would be probably in the leading from the bottom. It's that bad. And any kind of construction, any kind of government intervention there takes years to happen, if not months. And one of the interventions that I was working on was creating access for child nutrition as well as early childhood care and education. And government was not able to approve or sanction the construction of the child care unit in that particular village. So the lady there, she was a 30-year-old young woman. I still remember her name. It was Basanti. And she said she was tired of waiting for the government to make a decision, come and construct the childhood care center there. She took the initiative. She built a mud center, a mud house of sorts, with her own hand in 6 months, using her own finances, using her own human labor, and started taking care of the 20-25 children in her locality, giving them nutritious food, giving them early childhood care and education, which is part of the government program intervention. And this effort of hers, this leadership that she showed, was recognized at the highest level, and she got the Prime Minister's award for her initiative. So someone who's in a remote village in a corner of India, which we don't even know where it exists on Google Maps, getting to the Prime Minister's office, being recognized there, shows the potential and the capability of passion, commitment, and initiative.
Passion, commitment, and initiative. Okay, I think these words I'm hearing from you multiple times. So, initiative is something that you shared, a very good example of initiative and passion right now. So, I'm absolutely stunned to see that people who were not in power, uh, how they started building something without caring about anyone, whether they want to invest or not want to invest, and then got to a place where you mentioned. And um, very good example there. So you were earlier talking about something around uh, Sunita Krishnan. You've worked with Sunita Krishnan as well, and we all know that she is Padam Shri awardee. What kind of work have you done with her, and what is she doing to help us all? If you could please enlighten us.
I owe a lot of who I am today,
Hmm.
my courage to speak up and speak out, as well as my belief in myself, to Sunita Krishnan,
Hmm.
honestly. And it started with when I was at Rural Shores. We were trying to create job opportunities for people who otherwise would not have access to contribute to economic growth and development of the country. And that is where we started looking at victims of sex trafficking. And that's how I got introduced to Sunita Krishnan. I was so awed by her commitment to her passion that I went to her and I said, I want to work for you. She outright refused, because by then I was a IIM graduate. IIM, for the benefit of our audience, is the Indian Institute of Management, one of the most elite premier B school of India.
Yeah.
And yes, we are very reputed. At the same time, organizations at the grassroots believe that we come with our own arrogance and ignorance and do not prefer to have us on board. And that is exactly why Sunita Krishnan outrightly said, what will you do for me? You will come with the arrogance of saying that I know everything. I will change the world. I want to
Yeah.
transform the world and make the world a better place to live in. Let me tell you, my girls do not need you. You need my girls to make yourself look good. And that shattered my ego. That kind of they make you believe that you're world leaders in these big B schools that we
Exactly.
study in. And then when you meet real leaders who transformed the country or transformed thousands of lives, they show you what leadership is, and they show you your real worth for the society. Getting back to your question, what does she do? She has uh, to this date, in the last 20 years, helped 24,000 girls who, right from the age of 6 months to even 50 years old, uh, rescue them from trafficking, rehabilitate them, and reintegrate them back into society. And in the whole process, she has had more than 17 life threatening attacks on her. She is deaf from 1 year because someone had physically abused her and attacked her. And she
Oh.
continues passionately, committedly. And the most interesting thing about her, which very few people know, is she, for the last 20 years, has not taken a single rupee salary for the work that she has done for these thousands of women. And that for me was very inspiring. She's also responsible for creating many critical policies for the government of India that address trafficking, that address the way these sexually explicit videos are proliferated on YouTube, Google, and
Mhm.
Microsoft. So she was the person who created the PIL, which got accepted and on which action was taken. And today, if YouTube, Google, and Microsoft are supposed to remove these sexually explicit videos. It's thanks to Sunita Krishnan.
Wow. I don't know why such kind of stories are not told very often. There are a lot of news flowing around, but frankly, these kind of stories should be spoken about a lot, because the moment we talk about leadership, the only focus goes on Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and people like them, the ones who have in the corporate ladder grown up to the topmost positions, and that's where we are talking about. I think the best inspiration, where you do not have any resources, and despite that, when you start something against all the odds, and then you are able to establish something and get yourself to a position, really commendable. What do you intend to do now? Now that you are in Oxford, what brought you to Oxford here? So you are in Oxford doing your studies here. So what do you intend to do? Maybe 3 years, 5 years down the line from where you are already.
For me, the biggest motivation to come here was when I went to Ethiopia and I realized that there is so much more that needs to be done. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm a very committed person. I am a very passionate person and passionate for being where there is a need rather than, doing things that will probably be more comfortable or more typical mainstream job profiles. So that was what triggered me to come to Oxford, because for a global work experience, I wanted a global degree. I needed a global degree more than wanted,
Mm-hmm.
so that I don't have to explain that I'm qualified enough to do it. And another
Mm-hmm.
thing that I see is very often there is this misconception that if you go to the social sector, it's because you are not good enough to work in the private sector. But it's exactly the opposite. And I may be offending a whole lot of people right now when I say this, but private sector jobs are extremely easy to do. The real challenge is in the social sector. So I
Okay.
wanted to equip myself with an academic background, with the right kind of knowledge, so that when I go into the field, I'm not compromising on the beneficiaries or at the base of pyramid and experimenting with them while trying to be of use to them. So that is what I intend to do. But you tell me, you brought about a very interesting topic about when we talk of leaderships, and I was noticing that not a single female leader was mentioned by you. You mentioned Jeff Bezos, you mentioned probably Bill Gates. So who do you see as a female role model?
I think for me, it starts at home, my mother, my wife, and I also see um, in the workplace, there were few leaders I have come across who established themselves in very good way. So in the workplace, some of the places you find, and I think I find both kind of leaders there. In at home, they are leaders, and I admire them. But I think in workplace, I can give some examples where what worked for me at what point. So, particularly at one of the organizations, I had this leader who was very strong leader, strong aspirations there, and she grew really fast in her career and learned a lot, but really tough. So you see a tough side of a leader, and you know that every time you have to ask, it is going to become difficult. And every flexibility you ask, every time you want to propose your idea, it is going to become very difficult. But then in my next role at Deloitte, I came across another leader with whom it was a different, I would say, equation. Her approach to work was entirely different. So I still remember a few words that Amit, you start with trust, and then you if people violate that trust, that is when you take action. There is no need to be hard and harsh right in the beginning, and that's where it started. And I see that taking that stance, of course, not just this particular side, uh, also a lot of knowledge behind domain leadership and knowledge leadership, that is all there. But alongside that, how do you deal with people is a very strong aspect of how you become a leader, because to be a leader, you need to have followers. So I definitely admire, and I can call her name out here. It is Nikita Tete from Deloitte, with whom I worked for a long period. You can see her as a friend, someone who mentors you when you need it the most. And sometimes when you need that hard message, she will give you that hard message as well. Very important. So a very good combination of how you can become a leader. But do you find such leaders everywhere? I would say now, uh, as I am thinking after the fact, as you mentioned, that how many leaders are on the top, I'm thinking very few leaders are there. And maybe because there are only very few, only 5% or 10% of them, have been able to establish themselves and express themselves the way they can. So I really, and not just in the senior positions in my boss's role or anything like that. I have also come across some of the people who were junior to me, and when I started assuming their leadership, I realized that the kind of leadership they exhibit at their workplace, it's entirely different. So I think at Deloitte, it's been a very strong experience where they are very inclusive organization, and had a good experience working with the leaders at the top and leaders below me. I still admire and continue to work with them and aspire to work with them in case I get a chance in future in any capacity possible. Uh, I will switch gears again and come back to you, Prerna. Um, you mentioned something about the challenges, societal challenges that you were facing, and how it is easy to work in private firms than it is to work in social firms. And I want some information, some details about this. Why would you say that? Because I'm sure if I'm not offended by it, completely open to hear this perspective, but I definitely want to hear more about it. What makes you say that?
So I will share with my own examples. When,
And can I interrupt you? Can I
yeah,
interrupt
sure.
you? I know that we have got it is time that we start getting some questions from the audience. And if my audience has got any questions, please type it in the comments of Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn, wherever you are. Please post your questions there, and I'll take them up one by one with Prerna. Uh, Sorry, Prerna, to interrupt you, and please carry on. What were the society? What are the challenges that makes it different from private firm to social organizations?
So in private firm, there is a set process. There are the people you deal with are very much like you. You can have similar conversations with them. You know exactly how they think. And in fact, there is this whole term called homosocial isolation, which is basically trying to have people who are similar to you, think like you, speak the same language, come from a similar background. Most will be engineers, most will be MBAs, and so basically you know what you're dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is in a marketing kind of a role or whether it is in a technology role. It's kind of similar. But in the social sector, you have multiple stakeholders with varied interests and multiple complexities which you have to balance to get your work done. And the biggest challenge with social sector is that even if you have ambitions, you cannot really have fixed deadlines. You cannot necessarily look at ROIs in the way you look at ROI in a corporate sector. Very often, your impact cannot be measured. Your outcome cannot be measured. For instance, at rural shows when we were working, a very typical outcome was we gave jobs to 300 people, 3,000 people. But
Mm-hmm.
the larger impact was because we started giving jobs to women in rural India. The age of their marriage got delayed. Most of the girls enrolled themselves in higher education in part-time institutions. A lot of girls started saving from their earnings to fund their own marriage, which brought down the whole dowry related exploitation and issues. And
Mm-hmm.
these are the ripple effects of intervention which cannot be quantified. And there is no single framework that you can say that, okay, this is the work I've done, this is the output, and hence this is what I deserve. Another thing about social sector is uh, you may not necessarily be successful in doing something that you aim for. Like your ambition may not be may not be successful, but you almost always do something very important. And that importance versus your target are two different things, and that's where the difference lies. So managing stakeholders with multiple complexity, multiple interests, multiple backgrounds. You deal with politicians, you deal with illiterate people whom you are trying to employ, you deal with local peer pressure, you deal with the youth, you deal with the community. So people at different levels of all kinds of backgrounds, and that makes it that much more challenging.
Mm-hmm. So I have got a couple of questions, and I'll ask one at a time. I'm still waiting for the questions coming in. I don't think I have any, but yeah. Meanwhile, I can carry on with my questions. So very specifically, what is the so you mentioned that different people have different expectations. I picked that particular part, and you communicate at different levels. Can you give a very specific example from your experience where how you communicate at different levels in the social I can understand in corporate everyone understands the same lingo and you can continue to converse, but what is the key difference? If you could maybe take an example where when you were dealing with the vendors, this is what their motivation was, or anything that suits better to the situation.
So I can share with you my experience with Rural Shores. The whole model was we created data centers or call centers in villages rather than creating them in cities, so that instead of youth migrating to cities, the jobs go to their villages in their household.
Sure.
Uh, so what we decided was, since this was a standalone corporate company in the heart of a very strongly knit community-centered village, we had to
Mm-hmm.
have some community outreach, and we started creating the community outreach programs. Now, in a village, the ecosystem is very different compared to a city. People, almost everyone knows everybody, and they know everyone since their childhood and since generations. So it's not like how we live in the city, isolated in our own flats and busy on our mobiles. Uh, Also, the local politics is very, very strong. So what happens is, when we started reaching out for community outreach interventions, one of the places we were providing water, and this was in Maharashtra where there is huge water scarcity. Local politician there realized that this is a good way of getting a vote bank. So he wanted to
Okay.
partner with us.
Mm-hmm.
Our employees wanted to be on the face of this intervention because that gave them a very strong social standing of being community leaders, and they would be respected because they are giving the villagers what they really need at that time.
Mm-hmm.
uh, the manager and the customer wanted the return on investment for the number of hours that the employees put in. So they were not willing to let go the employees for community outreach program in the village, because they said, we are paying you for being in the office. You better serve our official needs. Uh, so, and this is just three stakeholders that I'm talking about. Within the company, there are the men and the women. In a village ecosystem, you cannot have young unmarried men, women socializing the way we socialize outside here in the cities.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different culture.
Mm-hmm.
So now, who should go? Why should they go? How do you decide who is allowed to go? Which localities you provide the water? And these small, while it may appear to be small decisions, if you provide in one place, you do not provide in other place, that can be politicized, saying you provided in a Brahmin or a higher caste community and not in the lower caste community, or vice versa. Whereas you would
Mm-hmm.
not even know that there was this kind of a differentiation in the communities where you provide water. So this is just one small example that your intention is very good. You want to give water to a village where there is no water, but you have to take care of the community. You have to take care of regional complexities, gender dynamics, business interests, community interests, local political interests. And this is, so
Interesting.
I guess you
Interesting.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, interesting because uh, sometimes when you hear the perspective and look into the depth of it, that's when you realize that there are so many things that you have to take care of. And when the politicians try to get into it, it becomes difficult. And the corporates are getting into it, they have a different motive altogether. They have to spend X number of hours outside, and that's it. Really interesting to hear the perspective. And Prerna, we have been speaking about a lot of examples from India primarily. Um, because our audience is global, and I would like to understand what kind of initiatives uh, are you run? Can we run in countries, developed countries like Australia and England and US or any other country for that matter? What kind of initiatives do you think women can take? Women have the opportunity to take those initiatives and maybe make a change there.
So when I came to UK, I met with the head of the UK Women International Chamber of Commerce for UK, Ms. Krishna Pujara. She
Mhm.
runs a nonprofit for women here, and I was shocked to know that the domestic violence cases, even in UK, are just as high as they would be in India. And this came as a huge surprise for me because we believe that developed countries may not have these kind of issues.
Okay.
So, in fact, the complexities in countries like UK, which are multicultural, multi-ethnic, with the with a huge class difference as well, is much more layered than a country like India. So in UK, the challenges that I see are there are different communities who are in different stages of their existence, uh, their place in the society, and uh, the integration of these different communities, whether they are Syrians, whether they are Africans, whether they are
Hmm.
Indians, whether they are Bangladeshis. So the integration, their homogenization, as well as their acceptance in the society is one big challenge. And I do see a lot of women leaders taking a front footing here and actively pushing these developmental and growth agenda. I also see some very nuanced challenges which we do not have back in India, such as female genital mutilation, which exist here because of the multiculturality of the country. And
Hmm.
that is another area where women are working. The third challenge here is the whole Black Lives Matter initiative that I won't call it initiative, basically, the agitation that brought to the forefront about
Hmm.
racial discrimination, which India being so huge but a very homogeneous country, we do not face. So there's a lot of active work that is being done to integrate people of color, people of color, people of different ethnicity, people of different countries and different backgrounds into mainstream workplaces, shattering the ceiling, not shattering, but easing out the barriers probably. So a lot of work is happening on that front as well. Uh, I have spoken to my friends from Australia, and there is a similar problem with integration of indigenous communities into mainstream society, but that has its own limitations as well as its own barriers. So the problems are there, and problems are very nuanced in each country depending on what kind of population and what kind of the development and complexity, social demographic complexities exist.
Interesting. Some of these facts are really surprising. Not even I was not even aware that these kind of things are happening. You hear them in pockets, but um, it requires some kind of reform. That is a surprise to me, certainly. So we spoke about India. We spoke about the challenges in the UK. How long have you lived in Ethiopia, and what kind of work were you doing there?
Ethiopia, I lived very briefly. I had to cut short my travel because COVID hit. I went there in
Okay.
Jan and I had to return in March, end
Okay.
of February, because the news started about COVID started spreading, and they said you have to go out before international travel ban is imposed. But in the 2 months that I was there, I worked with the government. I saw a very beautiful work culture. I have immense respect for Ethiopians. And one thing that stood out for me drastically was their respect for women. While the status of women in terms of gender equality is really far away from being compared to other developed countries like Finland or Nordic countries, but they respect women in ways that we do not see in India. I could travel late in the night. I could travel in public transport. In India, you'd be literally groped if you're sitting in a six-seater with eight other men. Here, if you sit in a six-seater with eight other men, they would make sure that they're not like physically violating you. They do not eve teasing does not exist in most parts of Ethiopia. Now, I could not travel to remotest regions like I have traveled in India, but wherever I traveled, I did not see any form of eve teasing. Very religious people, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences for me to be there and work with the people there.
Facts are really surprising. We see that there are developed countries, we see that there are underdeveloped countries, developing countries, and some of the expectations are that things are really good from all the perspectives, social security and better life for women and men and children and everyone. But these facts are surprising. Um, my question, and I'm curious, why do you think uh, this aspect where you felt safe in Ethiopia is much better in Ethiopia? What is the root of this?
I'm
Do you have a
going to,
perspective?
yeah, I'll be just giving my perspective because I don't have any kind of statistical or data driven information to back my claim, but I believe it is their emphasis on values.
Hmm.
So that also, so this is a double-edged sword. Now, because they emphasize so much on their religious values, they respect women a lot, but that also means that women are cornered into gendered stereotypes, which does not help them in typical career progressions, because as a woman you're expected to have children, and not just one or two children but multiple children. So any woman there who's of a marriageable age or of a reproductive age, if she's not having children, is kind of uh,
Big one.
probably faces a lot of ostracism in the society. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a double-edged sword. Like on one hand, it is very pleasant experience for an outsider like me to go and work there, but is it really a pleasant experience for me to be a localite woman there who's expected to be in a more maternal, caring, and nurturing role rather than a leadership position in a corporation is something that I do not have a strong answer for.
Okay, okay, that's good. So I have a question from an audience here, and a very interesting question. You have transitioned your career from corporate into social sector. So does someone have to be in a social sector to influence the change in the society? What can people like me do where we are coming out of corporates or are in corporates and there are women already working in corporates? What can they do?
10 years ago, when I moved in the social sector, it was not possible to influence change without being in the sector. But now there is an integration of corporate and social agenda. In fact, you see more and more corporates talking in the social language of sustainable development goals, of sustainability, of climate change. Uh, I'll give my own example of Schneider Electric. When I was working for Schneider Electric way back in 2009 and 10, we used to, when we had to advertise products, we would say, this is the product, these are its features, this is how it will perform. Now, if you look at Schneider Electric's advertisements, they talk of sustainability, they talk of energy conservation. They do not talk that this is my product and this is how it looks. So that is the difference. And yes, now you do not really have to be in the social sector. In fact, now I urge that you better not be in the social sector, but be in the corporate sector
Okay.
and drive change from there, because corporates have the financial resources, they have the human resources, and now even more than before, they have a social mandate one way or the other. In India, it is driven by the corporate social responsibility law. In UK, while it is at the moment voluntarily, but more and more we do see that it is becoming more of a norm rather than an option to follow either ESG norms or ESG guidelines or some sort of an impact framework or impact reporting, which is required by companies. And these are also criteria in which by which investors filter you out if you're not a socially responsible firm. So it probably makes more sense now to be in the corporate and drive social change, because the impact is much larger, impact is global, uh, and you have the resources to do things.
Okay. Interesting. Uh, very interesting perspective because being in corporate, you can still make a change. And identify your CSR initiatives, corporate social responsibility initiative that that particular organization is taking. Start finding ways to participate in that. Good point.
I
Very
would
good
like
point.
to also add here that it's not just about CSR. I think you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to be a change agent within your organization, within your team itself. Do you really have a gender balanced team? If not, what are you doing as a manager? And what are you doing as an employee to push that? Can you push that? Do you have socially responsible interventions? Are you, say, doing sustainable fashion? Are you promoting sustainable fashion wear within your organization? If not, can you be that trendsetter? Can you use this, maybe khadi or hand woven fabric against
Hmm.
an artificially created fabric? So you can be a change agent if you really want to. It's not about joining the social sector and then working only with the poor and the homeless and the downtrodden. No, there is opportunity for change at every instance, in every role, in every aspect of our existence. We should just be wanting to be willing to be making that change.
Good. No, absolutely good. I have got one more question, and I think partly you have answered it, but I'll still say that out here. Do women in corporate life have time to look into the social issues? And I think partly you have answered. You start with as basic as wearing khadi, where you don't need time, it's the intention. What do you want to do? Um, and you have also spoken about some of the other initiatives. Do you want to spend a few seconds on this question as well?
Absolutely.
Do women in corporate life have time to look into social issues?
I think women in corporate life do not need to separate social issues from corporate issues, because working in a corporate as a woman itself has several challenges. So, as a woman, can you really help other women grow? As a woman, can you really mentor other women and help them to not make the mistakes you have made while being wherever you are and climbing up the career ladder? Can you create those opportunities for other women in your team, outside of your team? Can you create a safe space where women can come and share their inhibitions? So it's not
Mhm.
about, like I said, it's not about looking out of your existence. It is about how can I make my workplace and my environment better for everybody around me. And that is also a very important social cause. Mental health is not something we speak about, but we always talk about organization culture. And who makes this organization culture is you and I. What do you say, Amit?
Oh, absolutely. It's a good perspective to look into how you have to have intention. Before intention, uh, you will not be able to find spot the opportunity to make a difference. I have got another question, and I know that we are running a little on the top of the hour. We are here, so I'll just ask this question, and let's see where we go from here. So the question is, have you been able to create a balance between your professional growth and family life?
One word answer is yes. I'm
Hmm.
happily married for last 10 years with an amazing man I'm deeply in love with.
Okay.
And I feel privileged to be with my partner, with my spouse. And yeah, but again, it depends on what we call as a successful family life.
Okay.
So I think I began my whole conversation saying I create my definition of success for workplace the same
Hmm.
way I create my definition of success for my family. And as far as I'm concerned, for me, it is more important to be a good friend for my partner, to be a good daughter for my mother, and be a good sister for my siblings, which I'm very proud of, and I am very successful. So, yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. That's good. I think key takeaway is for this particular answers. I would say for me the key takeaway is you define what success looks like. And don't get uh, drifted by the fact that everyone is saying that this is how success looks like and you are following their dreams rather than your own dreams. That's absolutely a good point, because I think key to happiness is all about you defining success and achieving it yourself. That's really good. Now we are heading towards the end of the conversation here, Prerna. Very insightful conversation we've had here. I just want to ask, what do you want the audience of this discussion take away from our conversation? Women in leadership, especially in the societal impact, when you're making societal impact, what are the things that, in case you have to conclude it all together, what is it that you would like to say about it so that they can remember it?
I would say four main important things that I personally follow as well. First is take initiative. Look, rather than saying I'm contributing to the society, look inverse the lens and see how can I give myself the opportunity to be of use and be of help. And when
Yeah,
we reverse the lens, there is just no dearth of the things that we can do for the number of people we can do at all levels, right from the leadership to the absolute needy people outside in the society. So that is one. Inverse the lens, allow yourself the opportunity to be of use and be happy. Second is take initiative. One is to see an opportunity, but what do you do with the opportunity is you take initiative. Third is have the courage to speak up and speak out when you see something is right. Appreciate it, and when you do not see something is right, please speak it out. Very often women forget that or hesitate in voicing out their opinion, which is the biggest difference. And most importantly, be yourself. Define your success, define your path and walk on it, and be proud about the choices that you have made.
yeah. In the interest of takeaway, I would like to just repeat that. Could you please say the first one? I know I have captured initiative, what was the first one that you said, so that I can just conclude it here?
First one is to create opportunities for
Create
yourself to
opportunities.
help.
Hmm. So basically, I'm just writing it down, and I think it is available. It is applicable everywhere to be the leader. So create opportunities yourself is number one. Number two is initiative. When you think something has to be done, start it, because you have to start it for anything to happen. Speak up and speak out. Appreciate, and if there are things that need improvement, call out and be yourself. You don't have to imitate anyone. You are one unique personality, unique individual. So be yourself and be happy with whatever you are. Is that all right?
Absolutely, Amit. Thank you so much for summarizing it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prerna, for taking time with us. It was really insightful, really good perspectives that I heard from you. I will think about it, a lot of it for me to think and digest as we are speaking. And I'm sure our audience is also thinking about it. All those examples that you gave, how different places in international world, we think that some of those places are some of these things are really good, while in other places things are happening. You mentioned about Ethiopia, where some of the things are happening much better than what it is happening in the England, in the UK, or in the country like India. So completely appreciate all the perspectives and all the experience coming in from you. um, can people find you on LinkedIn in case they want to connect with you?
I'll be more than happy to help anyone or even support anyone and even answer any questions if they reach out on LinkedIn. Yes. So my
Okay,
LinkedIn
okay,
is Prernaw. You can hopefully find me
okay.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, audience, you can find Prerna Vadikar on LinkedIn and get some more insights from her. And thank you, Prerna, for taking out time. It has been a wonderful conversation we've had. I really would like to thank White Board Labs and University of West Indies Open Campus and Dr. Luz Longsworth for providing us this opportunity to have this discussion, have this candid discussion right here in this forum. I have a lot of key takeaways here, and I'm sure a lot of people would have. I would like to thank again and would like to conclude this. Thank you so much, Prerna, and good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are in the world. Take good care of yourself and have a nice rest of the day ahead for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amit. It was a delight speaking to you.
Thank you.